A very good morning to all. Thank you for this opportunity to share God's word with you. The year 2021 is ahead of us. What is in store for the rest of the year? Yes, we are still in the pandemic, and because of this pandemic, there are a lot of hardships. What are some of the hardships? People have lost their jobs, some have lost their businesses, loved ones are separated. For instance, my daughter is still stuck in Singapore, has not come back to see her husband for almost a year. There's psychological and emotional setbacks. Some people have taken their own lives, committed suicide because they couldn't stand this situation anymore. And of course, there are curtailments and cancellations of trips and dreams. Accepting a new normal, now we have to wear masks. There are a lot of uncertainties in front of us or ahead of us. Now, we must look at this situation not as a permanent thing, because right now Malaysia is going to have vaccination for its population. Yes, these times are bad and sad. It's like a reel or a roll of film. In those days we don't have digital cameras, we use this kind of roll of films, and perhaps these few frames of our times are bad and sad, very sorrowful. All right, but that's not the whole story of our lives. We must consider the whole reel, right? Perhaps at the end of the reel, there's a happier ending. We want to look at the book of Ruth. Ruth chapter 1 verse 1 says, "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. And a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and two sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion." But the sad thing is, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her two sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. And after they lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her two sons and her husband. Bad things happen to us. That's life. All right? And where Naomi is concerned, not only her husband died, her own two sons also died. Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." And then she kissed them, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." Here, Naomi was feeling very bitter towards God, blaming him that God's hand has gone out against her. And so Naomi took offense at God. And perhaps some of us are taking offense at God. Why did God not stop the pandemic? Why did God? And so we are upset with God. We're disappointed with God, like Naomi. And so Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. So Orpah took off. Naomi took offense at God, and Orpah took off. But Ruth reasoned with her mother-in-law. "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." And so Ruth wants to stick with her mother-in-law, all right, and want to return with her. Ruth took risks. Orpah took off. Naomi took offense, but Ruth took risks to follow the mother-in-law back to her hometown. But when they reach Naomi's hometown, the people say, "Isn't that Naomi?" Ruth chapter 1 verse 20 says, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." Mara means bitter. "I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Lord has brought misfortune upon me. And so Naomi continued to take offense at God and blame God for her misfortune. After reaching home to Naomi's hometown, Ruth went to glean or to gather leftover harvest of the wheat and barley. And it so happened that she was gleaning. Gleaning means collecting what is left over from the harvest field. But she was gleaning at the field that belonged to Boaz. Now, in Ruth chapter 2, verse 5, Boaz asked the foreman of his harvesters, "Whose young woman is that?" The foreman replied, "She is the Moabitess who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She went into the field and has worked already from morning till now, except for a short rest in a shelter. So Boaz's foreman informed Boaz that this woman was very hardworking. She worked from morning until noon and never had rest until now. And so Ruth caught the attention of Boaz, the landowner. And so in verse 8, Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with me. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I've told the men not to touch you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." And after this, she bowed down with her face to the ground and she exclaimed, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" And so Ruth does not know Boaz took a liking to her. Boaz replied, "I've been told all about you, about what you have done for your mother-in-law. Since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with the people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Of course, Boaz understands from the Old Testament scripture, for instance, in Psalm 36, God, your love is so precious, you protect people in the shadow of your wings. And so the picture of God gathering the people under his wings means is a picture of God's protection. "Be merciful to me, God, O God, be merciful to me, for in you my soul takes refuge. In the shadow of your wings I take refuge, till the storms of destruction pass by." And so Boaz knew what it means to take shelter under God's protection. And like times like this, in this pandemic, it is good for us to take shelter under God's wings, so to say. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly and uncovered his feet and lay down. Now, this was taught by Naomi. Naomi taught the daughter-in-law Ruth, "Wait till Boaz has finished eating, then go and lie down next to him and uncover his feet." This is a very Israelite custom. It's a picture of falling in love. When Ruth went to uncover Boaz's feet, it's a sign to tell Boaz, "I am available to be married by you." Right? In the middle of the night, something startled Boaz, and he turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." A kinsman redeemer means is a relative that will take care of all the debts, of Naomi. And so here, earlier Boaz has told Ruth that you have taken shelter under God's wings. Now it is Ruth reminding Boaz, "I am now coming to take shelter under your wings." All right. And so to cut the story short, uh, Boaz actually fell in love with Ruth and they got married and they gave birth to a child called Obed. Right? And Obed is actually the father of Jesse, and Jesse is the father of David. That means Ruth Ruth is the great grandmother of King David. Ruth became the great grandmother of King David. That was part of God's plan. This widow married Boaz, and they become the parents or the great grandparents of King David. The same David who killed Goliath, and the same David who became king over all Israel. Now, as I said, we may look at a few frames of our life where it is very bad and very sad, but that's not the whole story of our lives. All right? Some people think there's a whole story. My life is so bad and so sad. And so they don't want to continue anymore, and so they commit suicide. It's wrong. As I said, perhaps the end of the roll of film could have been a happier ending. All right? Don't give up now. Don't look at a few frames that is now, that is so sad and bad, and give up. There could be a happier ending at the end of the reel. Life is stormy, right? Life is 10% what happens to us like now, but 90% how we respond to it. Some people, yes, they have lost their jobs, but they have also created new jobs for themselves, right? And they are making money. Life has become better, even though they have lost their previous jobs. They are now doing something different that is perhaps even more profitable. So we are not defined by our circumstances, only by what we do with what we've been given. Yes, life has given us COVID-19 and this pandemic. It's not the end of the world. It's what we do with what is dealt with to us. And so we know that all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. And we must believe that. Where Elijah was concerned in 1 Kings chapter 19, he was so discouraged after after winning the battle on Mount Carmel. He was running away from Queen Jezebel. And in the midst of the running, he came to a broom tree, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said, take my life. Like some people today who commit suicide, Elijah also wanted to commit suicide. He says, God, take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. But did Elijah die? Did God take his life? No. God sent a chariot of fire to take him to heaven. All right? There are two people who never died in the Bible. One was Enoch, right? And the other one was Elijah. Okay? God sent a grab, a chariot, a fire to take him back to heaven. Another person is Joseph, sold off by his siblings, his brothers, into slavery. He ended up in Egypt. All right? Was it bad and sad? No. God had plans for Joseph. He became the prime minister. After interpreting Pharaoh's dream, he became the second most important person in Egypt. And later on, when he was reunited with the siblings who sold him off, he said to them, God sent me ahead of you to preserve you, to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance, because there was 7 years of great famine there. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. And so he was telling his brothers who sold him off, all right, it was not because you guys were bad and you sold me off to slavery. It was all part of God's grand design. So that right now I am a father to Pharaoh. And when you look at Jesus, he looked like a criminal, like a loser hanging on a cross, crucified, right? But then he died and he rose again on the third day, ascended to heaven, and is going to come back again as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But as he was lying dead in the tomb, that was Friday. Everything seems to have been so hopeless. If you were part of the 12 disciples that followed him, all is lost, isn't it? You gave up your jobs to follow this Messiah, and now he's dead. He was crucified like a criminal, and now he's dead and buried. But that's Friday, right? Friday is the time that they tortured him, crucified him, and he died. But that's Friday. Sunday's coming. Sunday is the time when Jesus will rise again to prove that he is who he claimed to be, the Son of God, right? So for many of us, perhaps right now, if you're going through pain and problems, sadness and sorrow, perhaps it's the Fridays of our lives, right? But it will end, okay? Because Sunday is coming. The sun will shine again. So let's trust God when life doesn't make sense. In the storms of life, we have in the Gospel of Mark, Mark chapter 4, a furious squall came up and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion, and the disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" We are like the disciples, all right? We are going through this pandemic. There's so much problems here during this COVID-19 pandemic, and we're crying out to God because, like Naomi, we take offense at God. God, what are you doing? Why aren't you helping us? Don't you care if we drown in a pandemic? All right? We are like the disciples. Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And the wind died down and was completely calm. They said to his disciples, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." When you don't know Jesus enough, all right, you will not have the faith to carry on. In times like this, perhaps our doubts are higher than our faith. In these times of pandemic, when the whole world is brought to its knees, we are all riding out the same storm, but we are not necessarily all in the same boat. We are all riding out the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. With Christ in the vessel, we can smile at the storm. We sing that, isn't that? Right? Do you have Christ in your vessel? We may be in the same storm, but not necessarily in the same boat. Do you have Christ in your vessel? And so 2021, we realized that Opa took off. All right? Naomi took offense at God. She was upset, disappointed, and doubted God. But Ruth took the opportunity to follow the mother-in-law back. She took risks. And what happened? Although she lost her husband, where Ruth, she's a widow, because she followed the mother-in-law back to her homeland, she got married to Boaz, and Ruth became the great-grandmother of King David. A much more happier ending at the end of the film. And so in conclusion, let's keep the faith. Let's keep believing God that things will get better. Because we mustn't look at just these few frames of our life right now. All right? These few frames is perhaps bad and sad. Consider the whole reel. There could be a happier ending at the end of the reel of film. God's promises come to those who are faithful and patient. So like Ruth, let's take risks and let's journey on the year ahead, 2021. Let's not give up. It may be rough and tough. It may be a great storm for us. But with Christ in the vessel, we can smile at the storm. Thank you.